Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video, we're going to do a little bit of reflection about myself getting into the hobby. And today's video is going to be titled 5 Things I Wish I Knew When I Got Into Warhammer / Tabletop Wargaming. For me, getting into Tabletop Wargaming was getting into Warhammer. I didn't really play any other games until very, very recently, almost exclusively Games Workshop. Up until probably the past 5 or so years. So a long period of my time in Tabletop Wargaming has been exclusively Warhammer focused products. That being said, I want to talk a little bit about when I got into the Wargaming to begin with, when and how, and sort of where my journey all began. And then the, 5 sort of topics I want to talk about why I enjoy or why I look back at these things and think, wow, I wish I knew these things I know now when I get into the hobby. So hopefully anyone new getting into the hobby can think about these things in their own way. But with that all said, we're going to talk a little bit about how I got into the hobby first of all, where my introduction was, how old I was, all that sort of stuff, and then we'll go into talking about the 5 things. And so let's talk about my journey into the hobby. So aged 8, both me and 2 of my cousins that are older than me were given a HeroQuest box set to play with from one of our uncles. This is really where we sort of started getting into. Around the time I was getting into the hobby as well, things like Lord of the Rings were certainly picking up traction. I remember seeing all the Lord of the Rings movies, when they first came out. That was definitely a very big part of my introduction and my love for fantasy was that sort of time. I remember, as a child, I really enjoyed watching like old fantasy movies. I remember the old 300, like the original 300, the old one, the old Jason and the Argonauts, and other ones like that. Really enjoyed those movies. And then after a few months, 2 of my cousins, and one of these different cousins, so there's 4 of us. 2 of them went and picked up the 5th edition starter set, got Empire and Orcs and Goblins, and then the following Christmas, my other cousin went and got some Lisbon, and I went and picked up a Skaven army. Now, my first models were Wood Elves. Previous to this, I'd gone and bought a blister pack of Dryads, but at this point in time, Wood Elves were not, didn't have an army book in store. They're really hard to find all their stuff, so I ended up going with Skaven instead as my first proper army, though my first models are Wood Elves. And then for a long period of time, we mostly played at home, playing each other. This was pretty much how we bonded, the 4 of us as kids. Was the 4 of us really just getting into it, continuously sort of playing. We'd go occasionally to Games Workshops with like family and stuff like that. But mostly it was just playing between us 4. Now, early high school was when I sort of started to make other friends that were into this sort of thing. And I probably started dabbling in 40k a little bit more. 2 of my cousins picked up the Battle from the Crag box set at that time. I'd started getting into some Eldar in 40k, and we started, getting into that sci-fi sort of era of things. And then it wasn't until really that I finished high school that I fully delved into Warhammer. I was an apprentice chef in the city. And I had a local GW, that I would go to on my break and spend all my time there. And that's pretty much how I made most of my friends in the hobby originally. And then from there, I've sort of expanded out from that place, going to other local communities and stuff like that. And now, 30 in a couple of days. And, it is what it is. But that's sort of my journey and the things I sort of had to go through of like just being at home. You got to remember as well, a time when I was in the hobby, like, forums were not very apparent, like they were very basic at that point in time. Facebook didn't exist when I started high school. Our phones, the most advanced thing they could do was play Snake. It's weird thinking back on like that sort of stuff, I remember cassette tapes and all of that. And I know I'm not that old compared to some people that watch the channel, but it is weird. Like I'm definitely in that sort of bracket really where my childhood was that big change. I had that big change from these things to more modern times. I had that big boom in sort of my childhood. So that's sort of my journey. But what this video I really want to talk about is I want to talk about 5 things I wish I knew through this journey. That I think would have helped me, and so I hope they help others. And so, let's talk 5 things I wish I knew when I started Warhammer tabletop wargaming. The first one is start small. Now, I said I wish I knew these, but probably some of these are also going to be points of things I wish I could have had access to. Now, I definitely wish I knew of certain things. Start small. This goes without saying, like buying a 2,000 point army or buying lots of boxes, buying things before you've finished painting or building what you have can slow down progress, and especially as a younger kid, this definitely hampered my progress and probably is part of the reason I struggled with the next point I'll get around to. But I think definitely look at like skirmish games, look at ways to get in without having to make these big 2,000 purchases. These big 2,000 point purchases. I think games like Warcry, Kill Team, Underworlds, and all of that are great for getting into the game. Not to mention there's other fantastic skirmish games out there. I love Elder Scrolls, Moonstone, Rivenstone looks like it's going to be absolutely amazing, stuff like that. So definitely recommend just having a look at them. And then we go basic painting and how easy it can be. Now, basic painting skills. When I was young, there were no Warhammer TV painting guides. You would get a white dwarf that would have some painting guides in it. But I guess a lot of this just came down to practice. As someone young, I just wasn't willing to put the practice in. I couldn't get that look of what it looked like on the box, so simply, and I couldn't understand. And so I think just having some basic knowledge and having the ability to maybe spend more time getting some painting ideas was something I probably needed to do. Other things are like tools, how much, good brushes and things like a wet palette and stuff like that can help with your painting. And also, like I said, start small in the point before. I think this is definitely something that eases painting. When I was young, I would just go buy a new box or new models every time with my spending money or my pocket money or whatever. When I got my first job as a kid, I'd go just buy more models. I wouldn't paint anything, I'd buy models. I'd buy paints, but they'd go, I'd never use them. And so that's definitely another point. Moving on, point 3, the competitive meta. And this is an interesting one. I always hear the conversation of when people are looking like, and they ask the question, what army should I get into? People do generically respond with rule of cool. Now, I think rule of cool is all well and good. I love the idea of buying an army you are passionate about. There's so many armies I own that are not competitive in any way. However, I wish I understood where armies stood. I wish more people talked about where armies stood on the tabletop when this, and like what choices were, so you knew what to expect. You would go buy potentially some big monsters, and this happened a lot in fantasy. Would be a massive place where this was a big thing. You would buy all these models and use them and be like, a cannon just killed my dragon in one shot. That's not fun. And so I wish I understood these sorts of things so I knew what to expect so me and my opponents could. And this is something like I think there is definitely a lot of people putting out stuff there for, so you can understand these sort of things and know that like, okay, this isn't the most competitive choice, but I know how I can make it work, or I can at least know what to expect. I'm expecting to lose, 75% of my games playing with these particular models or this particular army. Number 4, how fun tournaments can be. I didn't go to my first, outside of a friendly local GW store tournament until I was about, 21. I never sort of went into them. And for anyone new getting into hobby, tournaments are great. For every, worry you've got of there being that guy or that person at an event, I think they are few and far between, and they're going to be on the top tables. If you're going for the top tables, you've got to expect you're going to play some hard as nails players that are all about winning. But for the vast majority, I have enjoyed 99% of my games, and that is even against some really top level players. I've played some of the best players in Australia, members of our Worlds team. I have played on the tabletop. In fact, I play against one of them quite regularly. And yeah, I think tournaments can be really, really fun. They're a great way to meet people, great way to meet community. I've made so many friends across Australia, even from other countries now, thanks to the tournament scene. And last of all, point 5, don't sell my painted armies. Now, I know this is for everyone, and we do not have unlimited space, and some people do churn these over, but for me, I always regret selling painted armies. I regret selling some of the painted armies I have in the past. I wish I still had my Blood Drinkers, and my Death Watch, and my Sylvaneth that I painted up. I wish I still had those armies, and I didn't have to redo those armies. I massively regret selling a bunch of those armies. I think at the time I was young, stupid, thought I could make some easy cash. Didn't really need to, could have just not bought new Warhammer and kept the stuff I had. Yeah, for me, it's don't sell my painted armies. I have that emotional attachment to the miniatures I own, and I wish I didn't sell them. But that is my 5 things. I'd love to hear other things you wish you knew when you got into the hobby. Let us know down in the comments. This is great to sort of talk about and have everyone sort of put their points out. But what did you wish you knew when you got started in the hobby? Let us know down in the comments below. And so that is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment down below and let us know what you enjoyed about the video. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our little community here at Sinful Gaming, we've got a link to our Discord server down in the video's description. And if you'd like to help support the channel in another way, you can do so either by joining Patreon or YouTube members, or purchasing something from our Ko-fi web store. All of them are linked in the video's description. Thank you all for everyone who chooses to help support the channel. As a special thank you to those people who have supported via Patreon and YouTube members, we'd like to give a special shout out to them all. So a shout out to our patrons Christian Weir, James, Soren, Greenskins Gaming, AJC, Kenny Lowe, Owler and Shop First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, Anton Nielsen, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, Dynat226, Derek, and GRP390. A special thank you to our YouTube members, Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Chris Wallace, Ronya, Vinny, Lockloric, The Johnny84, David Ellsworth, Revenar, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, Ariana Edwards, Sean Scott, Pink Nico Fire, and Robin Mankiller as well. Lastly, a special shout out first of all to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel you see, and to Xmorphic, who has done an amazing job at setting up our Discord server for her and making us have a nice place to content and to chat with all of our community. Thank you all for watching once again, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.